First of all, I'm happy to welcome Kathryn Funk. Kathryn is Program Manager for PubMed Central.
Yes, thank you. And today I'm not going to be talking about public access at all. But I did want to start off by just thanking yesterday's panel on global inclusiveness, because it sort of lit up my brain, but it also broadened the conversation that we're having around openness to include visibility of the literature. Access without discoverability and preservation is kind of a library's worst nightmare. And so if we're to build an equitable and open scientific communication landscape, I believe libraries and open archives need to have a role to play alongside publishers and funders. The preliminary research project that I am sharing today has an aspirational title of Open Archiving the World's Biomedical Literature, and it was born out of two basic ideas related to global inclusiveness. One, that the NLM collection should represent the intellectual content and diversity of the world's biomedical literature, which is no pressure, and that the most visible part of the NLM collection, which is PubMed Central, by open archiving the literature, plays a role in ensuring the discoverability and preservation of the scientific record. This project represents really NLM's first effort to identify the geographic gaps among journals currently collected in PMC and probe the reasons for those gaps. I will say at this point, the findings ask as many questions as they answer, but they provide NLM a framework to work from going forward. In short, if the NLM collection is to represent the diversity of the world's literature and promote access to and discovery of that literature, we need to find ways to move beyond 55% of applications coming out of just 5 countries. We need to recognize that we are falling short and respond through our collection policies and engagement with the international scholarly communication community. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all today about bringing open archives into this conversation as we seek to reduce the amount of invisible science around the globe. So stop by.
The next poster lightning talk is from Marcel, and now I'm getting really trouble to pronounce a name correctly, so maybe he can help out. Marcel is Open Access Officer at the Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society. He's also research associate in the project Innovative Open Access in Small Sciences in cooperation with the Leibniz Information Centre for Economics.
Thanks a lot. It's Wrzesinski, but it's fine. I think it's Polish, but I don't know how to pronounce it either since I'm German. Thank you very much for having me. You can see the poster there. It's called InnOAccess. Small, emerging, and applied research fields like internet regulation, media informatics, computational linguistics, or journalism particularly strive for a dynamic and diverse publishing ecosystem without high or any article processing charges and opaque publication processes. Thus, the 18 months InnOAccess project at the Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society, together with the Leibniz Information Centre for Economics, seeks to firstly improve the publication infrastructure of the established open access and peer-reviewed journal Internet Policy Review. Secondly, we articulate sustainable OA financing models in the small or smaller science context, while thirdly, establishing long-lasting and productive networks within this academic field. To give you a few examples, on a technical level, we co-develop various Drupal plugins to enhance and automatize the editorial workflow. We're implementing WCAG guidelines to make our content more accessible. And we will further discuss the use of alt metrics in our journal by workshops, for instance. In terms of business and financing models, we're overcoming one-size-fits-all solutions and create a reusable budget toolbox for non-APC scholar-led smaller science journals. And to build up on our community support, we'll consolidate existing and establish new academic networks, for example, by bringing back learned societies into the publishing responsibility and advocate for bibliodiversity. We have an open abstract submission model in place, so if you want to check that out, please go ahead. All research results will be processed into transferable solutions. That is 2 white papers, open access white papers, various workshops for publishing experts at our center, events for the interested public, and a full technical documentation on GitHub. The Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society therefore stands by its commitment to a free and sustainable dissemination of knowledge, particularly as a hub for internet research in Europe and as a part of a network of internet research centers worldwide. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now I have the pleasure to welcome Caroline Sutton. Caroline founded Coaction Publishing, and which was acquired in 2016 by Taylor & Francis, where she now is Director of Open Research. Caroline is involved in many open access activities like the DOAJ and OASPA, but today she's wearing her Dryad hat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've talked here for many different types of organizations, but today I'm here with my chair of the board of directors of Dryad. And just yesterday, we launched a new and improved platform. Dryad is now partnered with CDL, as well as a new partnership that was recently announced with Zenodo. And together with the full Dryad team, a new platform was launched, as I say, yesterday. And this has done a few things. It has better supports the submission of data sets as part of the journal submission process. There are now possibilities of uploading data from cloud storage or public lab servers. We've increased the size of the data sets that can be stored. And very importantly, data sets can now be updated and versioned. So we now have versioning capabilities there, as well as a lot more metadata that can be added. And standardized data usage and citation statistics are now updated and displayed for every published data set. And there are new API systems in place to make this much easier for institutions. So what I personally find really exciting about Dryad, I think what is really unique with it is, number one, this is a community-led, community-based project. We now have new institutional membership program that is growing. So just over the last few weeks, I've signed new contracts with new institutional partners, which is really exciting. And we've got many more that are sort of lining up to join us in that community. And all of the changes that have come about have come from the community asking for these things. The other thing that I also think is really unique about Dryad is it is one of the very few and maybe the only one of the leading data repositories that performs some work on that data set in advance and does curation work to ensure that that data set has all of the necessary metadata to actually make it fair or as fair as possible, along with ensuring, particularly, for example, in biology or in medicine, that that data set is not revealing elements that it shouldn't, so that it has been properly anonymized, et cetera, et cetera. So I will be at the poster. Also joining me is Katrina McCullum, who's also on the Dryad board, and Johan Nielsen back here waving from Lund University. And I feel really fortunate because this is one of those chances where, as chair, you get to bask in all the glory, but I did absolutely none of the work, and all I can do is just say we've got a really fantastic team that's worked night and day to get this launched, and I'm really, really proud of them. I have stickers. Come by the poster. This is what it looks like, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. Now I welcome Eileen Doyle. Eileen is specialist in Old English literature studies and cultural studies. Amongst many other activities, she's the founding director of Punctum Books and the founding member of both the Radical OA and Scholar-led publishing collectives.
Thank you very much for having me here. Sorry, I'm short. So very quickly, Punctum Books was founded in 2011 in Brooklyn, New York. We are an independent, scholar-led publisher of open access books in the humanities, social sciences, fine arts, and architecture and design. When we founded Punctum, we were open access because we thought that was the right thing to do, but we didn't really know anything about open access as a landscape or the history of it, or any of that. From 2011 to 2013, we just published as many books as we could, and all we really cared about was our editorial mission and serving authors who we felt were not well served by university presses and commercial presses in terms of realizing their vision. Around about 2014, we realized we're gonna run out of money, we don't have any money. Punctum was founded by professors, including myself, who did it for a little while also teaching, and then we decided to make it a full-time job, but with no support. We never had institutional support, we never got grant money, we just kind of were running on steam. We spent almost all of 2014 and 2015 banging on the doors of many universities, academic units, colleges, mainly in Washington, D.C., New York, and California, because we thought those were places that were hospitable to open access. I eventually moved to California in 2014 and spent multiple years begging the university to support the press, with no luck. Which is why my real message here also is that the only way we're going to solve sustainability for books in the humanities is through consortial library funding, which OLH has shown us works. There is no other way to do it. If you want an institution to support it, you're going to be stuck in the same situation as university presses, being subsidized and having the ability of one person to cut that money, and then you're out in the cold. Around about 2016, we accidentally ran into a scholarly communications librarian. I didn't even know what that was at the time. Her name was Sherry Barnes at UC Santa Barbara Library, and it completely changed our entire world. We had tried to get grants from Mellon to support a partnership with UCSB Library, in which they would do everything to help us do the things we hadn't been paying attention to: discoverability, dissemination, preservation, indexing, how do you get your print books into the libraries. We didn't know anything about any of this. For 2 years, we worked with Sherry to try to put together a vision in which an independent open access press run by scholars would partner with the university library to share expertise, technical resources, etc., and we couldn't get anyone to fund it. In 2018, Kristen Antelman showed up at the library from Caltech. We brought her our Mellon proposal and we said, we're not getting any money from them, we don't have any money, can we realize this vision anyway? And she said yes. As of 2019, we entered into a 2-year pilot partnership around open access books in the humanities and social sciences. The University of California is an incredibly hospitable place to be doing this, because the Council of University Librarians published a document I'm sure you're all aware of, Pathways to OA, in which they encouraged each campus to experiment with multiple forms of open access. The idea was we won't choose one way to get there, we'll experiment with all of the ways. And Kristen Antelman decided at UCSB she would work on an APC model and she would also support Punctum Books. The next phase is, how are we going to keep this going into the future? So we have spent a year with the librarians putting together all the technical things that we didn't have in place, changing our workflows, everything. And that allowed us to then launch this April at the ACRL meeting in Cleveland, our supporting library membership program, in which a consortia of libraries paying very small amounts ranging from $500 a year up to $3,500 help support the operations of a press that publishes 30 to 40 books a year, but with an ambition to get that up to maybe 50, maybe 75, we'll see. Our financial model is basically what I call 300 plus 3,000. 300 institutional library subscribers, which isn't very much, and 3,000 individual NPR-style patrons gives us enough money to do everything we need to do and also to grow as well. Thank you.
Welcome, Alicia Weiss. Alicia is an independent consultant at Information Power. She has been an active proponent of open access for 20 years. As an academic author and enrolls with funders, libraries, consortia, publishers, and universities.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Our poster is about the Society Publishers Accelerating Open Access and Plan S project. This was commissioned by the Wellcome Trust and UKRI on behalf of Coalition S and conducted in partnership with the Association of Learned and Professional Society Publishers. It ran for 9 months this year, and I'm delivering an overview to you in 2 minutes. If only giving birth could be so easy. Do come and talk about either of those experiences if you'd like to. It'd be great to chat with you at the poster session. So, the report involved surveying both society publishers and libraries. We found that many of the society publishers that we worked with around the world were perhaps conflating the open access model generally with the APC approach to pricing. And so in our final report, we have explained 27 different business models and approaches that can be used by society publishers to transition to open access and move their hybrid titles in that direction. APCs are only one of those models, so there are 26 other options presented and discussed, including things like Punctum Books that we've just heard about, and models like the Subscribe to Open model from annual reviews. If you're a Learned Society publisher in the audience, you have allies ready and willing to support you in a transition to open access, and that includes libraries and library consortia. So because transformative agreements emerged in our project as one of the most promising transformation approaches, we convened a workshop bringing together representatives from that library world with society publishers and university presses. And they were focused on overcoming some practical challenges that currently make it difficult for small and medium-sized publishers to work on transformative agreements with consortia. We have co-created a set of principles for transformative agreements, and we've conducted pilots between 5 society publishers and 4 national consortia to deliver new transformative agreements in practice. Those will be signed by the end of this year. None of those pilots involved any kind of APC payment or author-side payment. And the toolkit, which is openly available under CC BY license for reuse, is designed not only for Learned Society publishers, but it can also be used by university or library presses, commercial publishers. It can also be used by OA-only publishers looking to work with libraries and library consortia as they repurpose their existing spend from subscriptions to supporting open access broadly. Would love to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Our next speaker is Heather Staines. She is head of partnerships for MIT Knowledge Future Group, building open source infrastructure for publishers and libraries. She is involved in many activities, but please.
Thank you so much. In 2018, MIT received money from the Andrew Mellon Foundation to pursue a landscape scan of open source software projects for publishers. This was done in conjunction with the Canadian Institute for Studies in Publishing at Simon Fraser University and conducted by a team led by John Maxwell. There are 2 parts of the report, an overview plus a catalog of more than 50 projects with a focus on sustainability, scalability, collaboration, and ecosystem integration. While the initial thought was perhaps to enable an apples-to-apples comparison, as you'll learn, it's very difficult. These projects all have found individual niches. Some problems identified include siloed development and a lack of incentive to work together, and funders who are prioritizing innovation over stability. As John points out, long-term survival isn't shiny, it's hard. So we'd like to pose, what would a serious funding environment look like that prioritized governance, collaboration, and integration over competition? The gap in the Mind the Gap name is not in the software, but really in the integration between the different organizations. In the end, what keeps open source software projects going are the community of people who care about them, the developers, the supporters, and the users. What we need to do is to ensure a larger, more diverse set of people care about these projects. At the Knowledge Futures Group, we believe strongly in academically owned infrastructure. In the coming months, we'll be pursuing next steps here at the Force meeting, at the Charleston meeting, and beyond. Please come and see my poster so you can learn how you can get involved as well. Thank you.
Sorry. So the next speaker is Lauren Collister. She is director of the Office of Scholarly Communication and Publishing at the University Library System of the University of Pittsburgh.
Thank you. So this poster represents a little bit of research that I did with my colleague Melissa Cantrell from the University of Colorado Boulder. And this research is about the status quo bias. And to introduce the status quo bias to you, I would like to use a metaphor that I think we can all identify with perhaps a little bit. So have you ever tried a new restaurant? Maybe you're trying a new cuisine, and maybe you go there and you get the menu. And you look at the menu and there are literally hundreds of options. There's pages and pages of different dishes, and then there are sauces you can add to it, and then side dishes, and you look at the menu and maybe you're really hungry, and so there's a little bit of urgency, or maybe it's not written in your native language, so you might not know some of the words, and it's all very overwhelming. In some cases, this is really great. You get a chance to have a lot of choices. You can get exactly what you want. But in other cases, maybe it's just so overwhelming you can't make a decision, right? And so what does a normal, average human do in that situation? Well, they look for something familiar, something they know what it is, and even if it might not be exactly what they want, or it might not be perfect, it's something they understand, they know, and they can tolerate. This is called the status quo bias, in which we are, when faced with a high cognitive load as humans, when we're complex decisions, lots of tasks, we're tired, maybe we don't fully understand what we're looking at, we look for something familiar, we bias towards the status quo. So our research actually looked at the websites of 29 different organizations that talk about open access for these factors that increase cognitive load. So we looked for complexity, we looked for reading level, and we also looked for language about choices and alternatives. We found that most websites have complex language that scores off the charts for most reading level tests, and that the majority of websites offer at least 3 and sometimes 8 choices for how open access could look with their publishing options. This is in contrast to subscription publishing, which is often framed as the default or the status quo, often with very little or no text describing it and how it works. So from our research, we suggest that this, in addition to maybe seeing a high APC that you can't really parse all the options for how you're going to afford or how you're going to even pay for it, this complex language can activate this bias towards the status quo, and of course that status quo is subscription publishing. We also have some suggestions on how to change your language in some very simple ways to try to mitigate that bias, try to not activate that bias upon initial hearing when you're talking to somebody and doing advocacy about open access. So come by the poster. We also have a link to the published paper and our GitHub with our data and our code that you can use as well. So I'll see you at the poster and share some more with you. Thank you.
So our next presenter is Paula Clement Vega. She's marketing officer for the Open Library of Humanities, where she's in charge of increasing the visibility of the OLH through outreach marketing and advocacy.
Hello, good morning. We have a poster outside entitled A Sustainable Scholar-Led Model for Open Access Without Publication Fees. And the Open Library of Humanities is a scholar-led project that facilitates open access by removing all author charges. We support academic journals across the humanities, as well as we host a total of 27 titles. We are part of a growing community of not-for-profit publishers that explore different business models and innovative approaches to publishing that adapt to the needs, in our case, of humanities scholars, so poorly funded in comparison to other academic disciplines. The Open Library of Humanities works with a consortial funding model in which institutions pool their resources in order to facilitate open access without the need to charge authors or readers. We are funded by an international library consortium of more than 200 universities, where each member pays an annual fee according to the country and size of the institution. So our idea is that research organizations and libraries make a relatively small contribution that covers the cost of running a publication platform on which peer-reviewed scholarly journals can then be published open access. And if you have any question or would like to learn more about the Open Library of Humanities, just come to our poster and ask me any question. Thank you so much.
So now I welcome Laura Paglione. Laura served as the project coordinator for Metadata 2020, providing directions and support to a large group of volunteers that are exploring the pathways toward richer metadata.
Thank you. So I wear many hats as well, and today I'm representing Metadata 2020. Metadata 2020 was established in 2017 with the mission to advocate for richer, connected, reusable, and open metadata. And the approach that we've been taking is to work with over 200 volunteers across the world and coordinate the activities that they do to provide recommendations, best practices, insights, and advocacy about metadata. The project is financially supported by Crossref. And what we're presenting today is a list of 8 of the most recent outputs that we have that the volunteers have pulled together. This is our premiere of that information. This includes a set of metadata principles, a set of personas that work with metadata, some existing best practices, a set of a literature review that was published in an open access journal, a survey of use of metadata, a glossary tool, schemas index, and a set of evaluation tools. So please come and talk to me about the work that we're doing. Over 2020, the year of 2020, we will be doing a lot more advocacy for these outputs, as well as what are the incentives for having richer metadata. So thanks.
Now I'll welcome Dan Morgan. Dan Morgan is Director of Community Relations at the Public Library of Science, with responsibilities for guiding plus strategic engagement with core scholarly publishing and research communities.
Thank you. So in May this year, we announced the rollout of published peer review across all 7 PLOS journals. This initiative, loosely under open peer review, allows authors the option to publish their peer review history alongside their accepted manuscript. The peer review history package includes the editor's full decision letter, complete with reviewer comments and author responses for each revision. We're going to be using component DOIs for those elements and be working with Crossref down the road to look into using their peer review deposit schema. But mainly, this poster is about, while we're not the first, clearly, publisher to look into published peer review history, we're building off the work of all of you in the room and other publishers that have worked and executed on this. We believe we've managed to do this fairly elegantly for using a more traditional approach and a third-party vendor and some more traditional typesetting kind of infrastructures that we still have. So yeah, please come and talk to me to see kind of what data points that we leverage to execute on this, how we're using, how we're working with our vendors and editorial managers to do this, and in general kind of use us as a test case to figure out how you would like to do this yourselves if you're looking into it. Thank you.
And last but not least, welcome Jodie Bailey. Jodie is head of Scholarly Communications Office at Emory University Libraries in Atlanta, where she leads a team of library specialists who are responsible for service surrounding copyright, open access, publishing, and research data management.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. I know everybody's eager to get to coffee and refreshments, so I'll try to keep it very short. My poster is really about an introduction to an organization that I think you all might find very interesting, and that is the Library Publishing Coalition. The library publishing in North America is focused on, it is mainly, primarily, overwhelmingly, in fact, open access, and it is the platinum or diamond model that some have used to describe, which means that there are no author-facing charges and there is no charge to the reader. So this method of publishing is supported by the libraries where it takes place, all academic libraries in North America. It is a great alternative to open access that is supported by APCs, which for many disciplines is not something that's going to work. So its materials that we produce as library publishers include journals, but also monographs and increasingly open educational resources, as Heather was talking about this morning. It's definitely a growing space in North America. Our coalition is only 5 years old. We started with about 15 member institutions, and we now have 85 member institutions. So we are growing rapidly and have a lot of things to offer the community. We provide a network of like-minded colleagues, professional development with opportunities for involvement to include committee and task force work, as well as a growing annual conference. We also have many resources to offer the community, and the great thing about them is the vast majority of them are open to the entire world, whether you're a member of the coalition or not. So we publish an annual library publishing directory with lots of information about member and non-member practices in library publishing. We have a curriculum that we're offering, the library publishing curriculum, which is itself an open educational resource. It is openly licensed, and it includes modules on content, impact, sustainability, and policy. We also have an ethical framework for library publishing that discusses publishing practices, including accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion, privacy and analytics, academic and intellectual freedom, and we offer many webinars throughout the year. So please come and talk to me about the library publishing curriculum. I'm on the board of directors. They supported my travel here to this conference, and I'm happy to share any information with you. Thanks.